everyone, so in this video we're going to be talking about a topic which is very near and dear to my heart, and that is ethical investing. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you guys about ethical investing is because I'm passionate about climate change and social issues, and in my day-to-day life I do try and do the right thing always. But when it came to investing, I was a bit unable to put my money where my values were until I found ethical investing. But even then, I still was a bit skeptical about investing ethically, because the main purpose of investing is to make more money. And if investing ethically meant that I would be making less money, then I wasn't really too interested in that. But what I did realize is I could make even better returns by investing ethically, and I'll show you how in this video. So make sure you stay till the end and see how you can actually make even better returns by investing ethically. But first, what exactly is ethical investing? Let me explain. By being investors, we have the power to hold big companies accountable for the ramifications of their actions and really make them consider the social and environmental consequences of their actions. And what if I told you that you could invest in ethical companies and still make great returns from your investments? Then really it's a win-win situation. A win for our future and a win for our investments as well. There are also these things called ESG scores, and this stands for Environment, Social and Governance Standards. In Australia, the ESG guide offers a good overview of what ESG stands for, and some of its suggestions are included below. So environmental, this focuses on environmental factors such as pollution, climate change, and waste management. The social factors are concerned mainly with how companies treat their employees and also the wider community. And governance also looks into a company's corporate policies, such as their tax, data security, executive compensation, and more. And if you are investing in US companies and US individual businesses, there's also a tab on Yahoo Finance which is called sustainability. And you can see here the ESG scores for those companies. So now let's get into how you can actually know if a company is ethical or not. And for this part, we will be interviewing Adam from BetaShares. BetaShares is an Australian ETF manager with a lot of different ETFs available on the ASX, including ethical ETFs. Adam is one of the directors of BetaShares, and he will be explaining what makes a company ethical and whether you can actually get good returns from ethical investing. So let's jump into the interview. What makes a company ethical?
It's a really good question, and one that probably doesn't really have a set answer because everyone's ethics are different. Your ethics, if you want to invest on, say, moral grounds, for example, you might not want to invest in things like pornography, but someone else might want to invest in a more environmentally conscious way. The way that we approach it, which is probably what I'll talk to, is really has two parts to it. So for us, the first part is, the companies that we won't invest in. That's things like alcohol, tobacco, armaments, pornography, and things like that. Our funds, we like to have an environmentally conscious tilt to them as well, because we're finding that environmental concerns are probably the biggest driver of the ethical investing world at the moment. So in our funds, we'll also exclude direct fossil fuel companies, we'll exclude mining services companies, and we'll also exclude companies that make significant revenue from financing fossil fuel operations. The second part of what makes a company ethical is the companies that we actively try and promote and include. And when I mention things like environmental considerations, for us that's looking at a company and seeing how carbon efficient is that company relative to other companies in its industry. And then the other part in terms of companies that we try and positively promote in our indexes, we won't actually include any companies that don't have gender diversity at the board level.
Very interesting. That's very, ethical and very diverse in the way that you invest.
That's really what we try to do. There's a lot of different people. We have a lot of charities invest with us who aren't allowed to invest in certain sectors. But also there's a really large push from millennials in particular who want to be making a positive environmental and social impact with their investments. And that's where we're trying to do things like, promoting companies that are making better decisions for the environment and promoting companies that are making better social decisions by, busting down the glass ceiling, for want of a better term.
Yeah, that's really awesome, and that's very admirable. I think that it's definitely the way the world is heading, and there's definitely a lot more pressure on companies now to try and be a bit more ethical and appeal to that. So on that topic of what makes a company ethical, how can we actually determine what an ethical company is? Is there anything that you can have a look at when you're looking at the ASX or companies like that?
Yeah, it sort of comes down to what I was talking about in the sort of way we screen companies. So you'll be able to look at a company and look at the industry it's in and what it does, and often that's going to show you, whether a company aligns with what you want to do or not. It can then get a bit difficult from there at a single company level. So, it can be quite difficult for the individual investor to really look under the hood of a company and work out whether that is doing things that align with the values that they want to invest in. For us, that's where an ETF can come into it, because it gives you the ability to invest in a fund that is investing in a positive way and has a lot of these screens that I was talking to and screens out a lot of those companies. We also have a responsible investment committee that oversees our funds. Now, they're not making any active decisions on what we invest in, but they're almost more like a gatekeeper. And so instead of you having a look at the company, you've got a responsible investment committee that's there, that's overseeing this fund, and will remove companies if they're doing things that aren't necessarily aligned with the interests of the fund and the values of our investors.
Yeah, that's really good, and that's awesome that you are continually having a look at those companies just to make sure that they're still something that you want to be investing in.
Exactly. Because ethical investing is an interesting thing. It is really dynamic and it's really evolving. If you were to have an ethical investment fund in the 70s, chances are that tobacco companies would probably still be in there. And then that changes over time as society's values change, and now we exclude tobacco companies, right? So you have to have the ability when you're creating an ethical fund to be able to evolve with the way that society's values evolve. Things like gender diversity screens, they're something we've brought in recently because we think that that's a positive step that society needs to be making and that boards and companies need to be making.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really awesome. And okay, so I think this is one of the biggest questions that people have when it comes to ethical investments, and that is, can you actually make good returns with it?
Of course you can. So look, the returns on our ethical funds have actually been better than the broad market since their inception. The thing we normally say with ethical investing though is, you're not necessarily there to try and outperform. It's just be cognizant of when you're going to perform well and what markets you're probably not going to perform well in. So ethical funds generally, they're going to have a tilt towards healthcare companies. They're going to have a tilt towards consumer companies and a lot of technology companies. Technology's really been driving the performance of the market over recent years. And chances are you're going to have a lot of those tech companies in an ethical fund. What you're not going to have a lot of generally is a lot of your big mining companies, a lot of your big energy companies, a lot of your financials aren't in there. And so it's just having an understanding of what market environments you're going to perform well in and where you might not perform well. So, if mining and resources and energy goes on a really big run, then funds that hold those are going to outperform ethical. But that being said, what we've found with ethical investors, most of them are conscious of that. Most of them are fully aware, and they're very comfortable with the fact that if energy goes on a rally, they're happy to not be involved in it anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it's one of the things that I was looking at personally when I was thinking, should I invest ethically? Should I not invest ethically? And yeah, you can still make very good returns with it. I think there's that, I guess, it's not a stigma, but people think that, because I'm investing ethically, it's almost like, I'm not going to get a return on investment.
It's definitely an outdated myth, and it's something that, at least it's starting to die away finally, because the reality is you can get you go and have a look at, the type of companies we hold. We hold Apple, we hold Google, we hold a lot of these big companies that you'd be familiar with, a lot of these big tech names that, have performed exceptionally strongly over recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially ETHI, I had a look at the performance of ETHI recently. It's been doing really well.
It has been. It's been an absolute standout in the space.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the channel and for sharing your knowledge. And is there anything else you'd like to share about the space or ethical investing where you see it headed in the future?
No, look, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to come on and talk. Look, ethical investing is one of the biggest trends in the investment management industry globally. I mean, the numbers that we're seeing in terms of moving from normal broad market investments into an ethical alternative is growing exponentially at the moment. I mean, we look at the numbers out of the US. Last year they had 4 times as much money go into ethical funds as there was in the year before. This year they've already had more than they had last year. So it is a big trend. And it's something where, for your audience, if they are interested in aligning their investments with their values, they now have the tools to do that quite easily.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Anytime.
Really appreciate it. And thank you for watching. So now let's get into the best ethical ETFs that you should consider for your portfolio. By the way, ETFs are a fund that can be bought and sold like shares on the ASX. So the first one that I wanted to have a look into is ETHI, which is the BetaShares Global Sustainability Leaders ETF. ETHI includes global companies, which are ranked as sustainability leaders by a strict screening process. The biggest holdings in this ETF are Apple, Nvidia, MasterCard, Visa, and Home Depot. And the index it tracks is the Nasdaq Future Global Sustainability Leaders Index. The main countries that make up this ETF are the US at 70%, Japan at 9%, Switzerland at 4%, Netherlands at 4%, and France at 2%. The sector allocation is mainly in IT at 38%, healthcare at 16%, financials at 15%, consumer discretionary at 14%, and communications at 6%. There is also a currency hedged version of this ETF, which is the ASX ETHI. This is good if you want to remove the currency risk out of the equation. And the management fees for this ETF are 0.59% or $5.90 for every $1,000 invested. And this is 0.62% for ETHI. The returns for ETHI are approximately 20% since its inception in 2017. So you can see here that there are some really awesome companies on this list that this ETF does invest in. And the returns for this ETF are really, really good at approximately 20% since its inception. Of course, past performance doesn't indicate future performance, but I still think it can show you that you can make even better returns by investing ethically. So the next ethical investment we're going to have a look at is FAIR, which is the BetaShares Australian Sustainability Leaders ETF. FAIR is the Australian version of ETHI, and it holds only Australian companies. The biggest holdings in this ETF are Fisher & Paykel, ResMed, CSL, Sonic Healthcare, and A2 Milk. The index it tracks is the Nasdaq Future Australian Sustainability Leaders Index, and the sector allocation is mainly in healthcare at 30%, financials, real estate, communications, and IT. The management fees are 0.49% or $4.90 for every $1,000 invested. The returns since its inception in November 2017 have been 8.08%. So I think that what this shows is you can get even better returns by investing ethically, whether you choose to invest in just Australia or also globally as well. So I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. What are your thoughts on ethical investing? Let me know what you guys think and if you are currently investing ethically. And if you did enjoy this video and found it useful, make sure you do give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos. I also have another video coming on tech ETFs, so if you enjoy content like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that video and turn the bell notifications on so you get updated every time I produce a new video. And if you'd like to learn more about these ETFs, I put a link down in the description below so you can check them out. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye! And if you enjoyed this video, I've put some links here to some other videos you can check out, so make sure you click the links.